Hi, it's a bit quiet around here at the moment. My middle daughter moved to Paris last week and I visited her at the weekend. And that is what this video is going to be all about. What I did last weekend. In this film, I'm going to use a range of tenses, but I'm going to focus on the past simple, the past continuous, and the past perfect. So I'm going to start by telling you a bit about what I did last weekend, and then I'm going to explain the grammar behind it. Last Friday, I went to Paris to visit my daughter. She had moved to Paris on the Wednesday before. I had taken her to the train station and I had waved her off as she set off for her new life in Paris. She is going to live there for about 10 months and she is going to work as an au pair. I went to Paris by train. It took about 3.5 hours. My daughter had taken 2 bags with her and I was taking her other 2 bags so that she had everything she needed in her new home. I also wanted to know that everything was fine with her. That evening we went out for dinner, just the 2 of us. When we were walking to the restaurant, people were sitting outside other restaurants and they were laughing and talking and eating and drinking. They were having a great time. At our restaurant, we had a wonderful meal. We chatted for hours and then we went back to the apartment and we were asleep soon afterwards. It had been a long day. On the Saturday, we caught the métro, the underground, into Paris. I fancied doing a bit of shopping. It had been my daughter's birthday before she left, and I wanted to buy her some perfume for her time in Paris. After that, we walked to the Eiffel Tower. Some street vendors were selling ornaments and others were selling food and drink. People were walking and skating and cycling around. It was really busy and we were trying to avoid crowds, which is quite difficult in Paris. But we could see a grass field where there were fewer people, so we sat down there and admired the magnificent view. As we were leaving, we walked past a bandstand, and on the bandstand there were about 30 people and they were having a dance lesson and they were doing the tango. And next to the bandstand, people were playing pétanque. And we stood there and we watched. And I could not imagine a more perfect Parisian picture. The tango, people playing pétanque, and the Eiffel Tower in the background. The next day, we walked into the centre of Paris for something to eat. And after we had had lunch, it was time for me to leave. Once we had walked back to the apartment and I had collected her empty suitcases to bring back with me, I said goodbye to her wonderful host and my daughter took me to the train station and I caught the train home. It was a fabulous trip. She was really happy that I had gone to visit her and I was really pleased and relieved that everything was fine with her. So that is why it's a little bit quiet in my house at the moment. So let's return to my story about what I did last weekend and let's look at the grammar that I used. In my story, I used the past simple. My daughter took me to the train station. We walked past the bandstand. We went to a restaurant. We use the past simple when we have done something in the past and that time has gone. In the sentence, we went to a restaurant on Friday evening, we have a time, on Friday evening. And on Friday evening is a time in the past and that time has gone. We do not need to have a time in the sentence. We do not need to say the time in each sentence, but you and I both need to know when I did something or when somebody did something and when they did something has gone. And those 2 things are really important. If I want to make a question out of the sentence, we went to a restaurant, I would say, did we go to a restaurant? I would say, did we go, and not did we went, because the word did is already past tense. So I cannot use two past tenses in one sentence. Did we go to a restaurant? Yes, we went to a restaurant. We use did plus the original verb when making questions in the past simple for all verbs except for was, were and could. Let's take the sentence, my daughter was really happy. If we want to make this into a question, we say, was my daughter really happy? We were asleep soon afterwards would become, were we asleep soon afterwards? And then with could, we could use the sentence, we could see a grass field where there were fewer people. This would become, could we see a grass field where there were fewer people? With the words was, were and could, we just switch around the subject and the verb. To make the past simple negative, we use did not plus the original verb. So we went to a restaurant becomes we did not go to a restaurant. We walked to the Eiffel Tower becomes we did not walk to the Eiffel Tower. We use did not plus the original verb for all verbs apart from were, was and could. And with those three verbs, we put not afterwards. So my daughter was happy becomes my daughter was not happy. We were asleep soon afterwards becomes we were not asleep soon afterwards. We could see a grass field with fewer people becomes we could not see a grass field with fewer people. When we're describing a situation in the past, so we're not talking about actions, we're talking about a situation in the past, then we use the past continuous. And we form the past continuous using was or were plus the verb plus ing. When we were walking to the restaurant, people were sitting outside other restaurants. They were laughing, they were talking, they were eating, they were drinking, they were having a wonderful time. Here I cannot say. When we walked to the restaurant, people sat outside other restaurants, they laughed and talked, they ate and drank, they had a wonderful time, because then I am talking about actions. And in my story, I wanted to describe the situation. And that is when we use a continuous tense. And continuous basically always ends with ing, and it is when something is happening, or in this case, was happening. Because the past continuous uses the verbs was and were, when we make a question, we just switch around the subject and the verb. So we were walking into town becomes were we walking into town. To make the past continuous negative, we just put the word not after was or were. Finally, the past perfect. Now this could be seen as a tricky tense, but it isn't. Let's make it simple. Let's start with the present perfect. Now, if I say, I have been to Paris before, that means I have been to Paris before now. I have been to Paris before today. However, I can say to you, I went to Paris last weekend. I had been to Paris before. And that means I had been to Paris before a time in the past. So not before now, but before a time in the past. I'm going to talk about now as 0, and I'm going to talk about the past tense as -1. And the past tense is either the past simple or the present perfect. So the past simple would be a sentence like, I went into town yesterday. And the present perfect would be, I have gone into town. So the past simple and the present perfect are -1. And if we take -1 one step backwards, it becomes -2. So if I use either the past simple or the present perfect in a sentence, and then in my story something happens before that time, I have to use the past perfect. So in this instance, I visited my daughter in Paris last weekend. I had been to Paris before. To make a question in the past perfect, we just switch around had and the subject. So I had been to Paris before becomes had I been to Paris before. To make the past perfect negative, we just put the word not after had. My daughter is going to have a fantastic time in Paris. It is going to be hard work and there are going to be some lows as well as some highs. But it's going to be a great year for her. And I'm going to miss her. I hope you've enjoyed today's lesson and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.